Hello, hello, hello. I'm Reverend Rene'e Ellis, and I want to welcome you to Real Anointed Needed Talk, a platform that where you can rant for your life. Our theme for this year is Be Real, Stop Lying. It ain't easy. Life is not easy. And our guest on today, I'm waiting for her to come in on today. Let's see what I need to do. No, I'm waiting for her to come in. Well, while we're waiting for her to come in, I want to tell you about this podcast that we have on today. And well, it's going on for this month, the end of January into February. Be Real, Stop Lying. It ain't easy. Well, we're featuring 4 qualified and distinguished guests to talk about mental health. It's a 4-session podcast that will help discern how to help those who are suffering from a mental illness and examines 4 topics. And one of the topics are that we're discussing concerning mental illness is what does it mean to be a Christian who is suffering emotionally, and how to discern if something is a mental illness or is it being affected by other causes, and how should the church respond to persons with mental illness, and how to provide hope for individuals who are depressed. And while we're waiting for Reverend Angela, I'm going to see if we have her on here. Maybe she sent a text that she's having problems coming in. I'm going to text her, ask her if she's ready to come in. I don't know if she's having technical difficulties or what, but we are here and we're just happy that you're here because we have some questions that have been emailing in, and I want to thank you all for emailing your questions in for this series on mental health. We'll also be here on next Friday, where we'll have the phenomenal Reverend Dr. LaShonda Fletcher. And on next Saturday, which is the 4th, we'll have Reverend Dr. Sharon Ellis Davis. There she is, Reverend French Coles. How are you doing? Can you hear me? I think you're muted. I can't hear you. If you can hear me, Reverend, you can hear me. Okay, we can't hear her. And we're going to have to find out why that we're not able to hear her. Okay. But we're talking about mental illness, or is it mental illness or is it something else? And she'll be in shortly, I'm sure. You know how the enemy is when we have an important subject that we know that the world needs to talk about. Well, we're ranting because this is Real Anointed Needed Talk, talking about things that ordinarily people have not been talking about. The church has not been talking about. Everything has been kind of pushed undercover, but we are revealing it here in 2023. The Lord has set the path for us to speak on things because we're real anointed and there's a lot of needed talk. When Christians encounter symptoms of mental illness, they're often confused about the cause and the appropriate response. Some assume that all such symptoms are caused by demonic oppression. Are you okay? It looks like it's locked. Let me see. It looks like your mic is muted. Cannot unmute your guest because they chose to mute themselves. You've muted. Okay. Now, for some reason, I can't hear you. And it says that you've unmuted yourself.
Right.
Let me do this. Okay. There we go.
But can you hear me?
Yes, I couldn't hear you. Now I can hear you.
Right.
Hallelujah. 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 Let me adjust this camera a little bit. Okay, myself. But I am so happy. I tell you, I was praying. I
I know
say
you are
the
too.
devil is a lie.
He is a liar.
Hallelujah. I am so happy that you're able to join us in this session. I'm so happy that you agreed to come on the Real Anointed Needed Talk platform and rant
I am
for
honored to be here.
the lives of the people, okay, and
Thank you.
ourselves, and ministering to those with mental health and those that just have questions, because we have quite. I got questions came in just a few minutes before you came in. They were still coming over the email.
Yeah, yeah.
We have a few questions here, but I'd like to give you. I want to introduce to you our audience who our guest is. Okay, this is Reverend Angela French Coles, my dear friend. I'm glad I can call you friend. You know,
Friend is
friends are not
correct.
always those that in your face all the time, but you carry them in your heart, and you know that whenever you come across them, you nothing has changed. And
Yes.
I love that about you. No matter when I've been able to see you, it's as if we just saw each other yesterday.
Yes,
You know, and
ma'am.
I can appreciate the love. Well, Reverend Andrew French Cole has been married for 33 years to Jerry Cole, and she has one son and one grandson. She also has retired from Jefferson County Public School Systems in Jefferson County, Kentucky, and she served as principal, counselor, a fifth grade teacher, and also a teacher of students with behavior and emotional issues. For 5 years, she pastored Community Temple Methodist Church and now is currently assistant to the pastor, which is Alice French Johnson, at Oak Grove Baptist Church. Hallelujah. We thank you again for coming in and agreeing to speak with us, kind of rant for the public with us. But our topic on today, if you let me lead you into the seaway, it is that we're talking mental illness or something else. And do you feel it's important to distinguish between disorders and spiritual issues? Because we know when Christians encounter symptoms of mental illness, they often are confused about the cause and the appropriate response. And some assume, like I was saying before, that are caused by some things is caused by demonic oppression. Others believe that unconfessed sins is the root of the problem, and some others dismiss these explanations and believe everyone exhibiting such symptoms should automatically seek help from mental health professionals. So, Reverend, can you help us make sense of the roles personal sin and supernatural oppression play in mental health and emotional issues, and help us to discover common sense and biblical perspective on about these struggles? But I'm going to let you further introduce yourself if you want to, and just have your way and just do what it is that comes natural to you that the Lord
Thank
has
you.
led you for this podcast.
Thank you. Well, let me say, first of all, that mental health issues is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. Having been a teacher in public school system and an administrator for many years,
Mm-hmm.
mental health issues are real. And
Yes.
needless to say, being in the church and in a role of leadership, you must acknowledge that mental health issues are real. And certainly, as we look all around us, even with issues which have occurred this week, we've seen five police officers displaying some very serious mental health issues. And do not for 1 minute forget that that's deeper than just demonic. Those are some mental
Yeah.
health issues. So, Reverend, if you will allow me to just a moment to
Have your way.
share just a little bit with you that. That 1 in 5 adults in this country experience mental health issues every year. Some are ongoing, prominent, and people live with them all the time, and some are situational and circumstantial. So that does make a difference in that part. But it is important for us to distinguish between mental disorders and spiritual issues, because
Yeah.
spiritual warfare is
Hmm.
real.
It's
And a
real.
lot of people don't seem to understand that. So when you talk about spiritual warfare, and I know that Sister Casey Combs hit on some of this already, spiritual warfare is the Christian concept, but we talk about of fighting against the work of evil forces. And
Hmm.
this is based on the biblical belief of evil spirits or demons, and these demons do interfere in
All right.
human affairs. And that's
Okay.
the first thing as Christians. You got to quit playing and saying demons and demonic warfare is real.
It's
And if
real.
you don't know it, check the word. Elijah, he had spiritual victory over Baal, but he still didn't want to live anymore because he was beat down, exhausted. He had moved into some mental disorders
Yeah.
even at the time of victory. Don't
Yeah.
overlook that.
Hmm.
King David, my favorite guy, because I've been too much like him in my life. King David, he was guilt ridden. He was
Okay.
so overwhelmed. Check it
Yeah.
out. Go deep into that word.
Yeah.
David was experiencing some mental disorder over
Yes.
all of the things that he had done.
That's
And
correct.
David, when you look at those scriptures and you check out those Psalms, Sister Rene'e, you will
Hmm.
see that David started having a mental breakdown. He
Yes.
said,
Yes.
I've done too much. I've gone too
Hmm.
far. I'm
Yeah.
overwhelmed. The guilt is
Yeah.
eating me up. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know the next step to take. I'm
Right.
too far. That was a
Yes.
mental health issue. And then Jeremiah.
Ah.
Jeremiah got to the point, Jeremiah said, I don't even know I was
You
born.
don't even.
I don't even know I was born. He said, this is
Yeah.
too crazy. This is, as that little boy said, this is above me,
Right.
Jeremiah
Right.
said. So it's not new.
It's
And the
not
scripture
new.
says that there's nothing new under the sun. So
Hmm.
when you check the Old Testament, mental
Yeah.
health issues have been around as long as man has been around. But then if you do a little research, 27% of churches do have a plan to assist with mental health issues, but
Okay.
that's only 27% of
Only
100% of
27%.
churches that
Yeah.
even acknowledge that mental health issues are real. That's a low number.
That's a low number, especially since, like you were saying, it's been around and awareness since the Old Testament
Yes,
church.
ma'am.
You know,
Yes,
so why
ma'am.
is it? Why has it not been addressed? You do you feel?
Well, the other piece to that is only 53% of churchgoers with mental health issues feel supported by the church.
Okay.
Now, here's where you get to a little bit of a slippery slope,
Okay.
because we are taught as Christians, you know what we are taught, and we're taught the right
Hmm.
things, to pray about it,
Hmm.
to depend on God,
Hmm.
to trust God,
Hmm.
and you should.
Hmm.
But God has given us resources.
There it is.
And sometimes people feel guilty, and we as Christians and even as ministers, we guilt people to the point that they will not go get the help that they need.
So we have a responsibility in that. Why
Yes, ma'am.
actually we have a part, we play a part in it.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's inadvertent. We don't mean
Yeah,
to be.
inadvertently, I know we're probably not,
We
but
think we're
it's a
being good
difficult
Christians.
subject to address, I think, because how many preachers are or pastors are equipped or have someone in their church equipped
Correct.
to recognize or to handle
Correct.
these situations?
And it's the old school. Many of us had that big mama when you go to her and you tell her, I don't know what I'm gonna do, and I'm breaking down and I feel crazy, and it's
Mhm.
people talking to me in my head. That's real.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what's Big Mama say? Baby, just go pray about it.
Pray
You must
about,
not
yeah,
be trusting God enough. You must
yeah.
not believe enough.
Take it back on themselves. Make it that does that bring about kind of what we Reverend Casey Combs talked about, that gets into the shame. So now you're ashamed to
Yes.
even reveal it or talk about it to anyone.
Yes.
So you ignore it and pretend
Hmm.
like everything
Hmm.
is okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And when you begin to do the research and look at this, some of the devil's favorite schemes in eroding our faith in God is
Mm-hmm.
making us think, oh, if God was really here for you, you wouldn't be
Yeah.
feeling this. The devil
Thank
loves
you.
to say to people, where is your God now? One of
Yeah.
his favorite schemes. And the devil wants us to believe that we are stuck in situations that are
Mm.
hopeless and that defeat is our destiny.
Yeah. But it's not. Yeah.
Well, it's not. And if you go to the scripture again,
Mm-hmm.
one of those good ones in First Peter. Your
All right.
adversary, the devil, he's
Yes.
walking about like a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour.
Thinking. Yeah.
People, look around.
Mm-hmm.
He is roaming about.
Yeah.
And if you do not think the number of children, teenagers that we are
Mm-hmm.
waking up every day who are
Yes.
either being killed right here in the streets of Louisville or
Yes.
involved in shooting and killing somebody in the
Mm-hmm.
streets of Louisville is not a mental health issue.
It's a mental health issue.
Oh, you better believe that
Yes.
it is a
Right.
serious mental health issue.
And
So
it's
those
becoming
are the
so
things.
obvious, that there's an issue because that it's an underlying issue because they're so right, like you're saying, we seeing so much of it now. I mean, every day,
Every day.
from morning to noon to night, it's repeatedly every day all across the country. Yeah.
Yes. And that stuff at this point, Sister Renee, Reverend Renee, this is generational.
Yeah.
These are
Okay.
generational mental health issues because I would put money, and I don't
Hmm.
have any money, I would put money
Yeah.
that every one of those 13, 14, 15 year olds we're reading about every morning have
Hmm.
got a parent who's got some
Yeah.
stuff
They had
going on.
blind can't lead the blind.
Blind can't lead the blind.
Yeah.
And then the other piece, this world is the place that we are in.
Hmm.
It is such a crazy place that fear and anxiety have
Hmm.
now grown for many people to a point of being uncontrollable.
Okay.
And we have to think about that. And these are the top mental health disorders. There are many, many mental health disorders, but
Hmm.
fatigue, anxiety, stress, temptation, fear, despair, lies, revenge,
Mm.
all of these things
All of
are
them.
serious mental health disorders. So a
Okay.
mental health disorder is characterized by a clinically, and that is an important word, because
Hmm.
sometimes you've got to separate, and
Okay.
everybody's not going to want to hear this, the
Hmm.
spiritual from the clinical.
Right.
A
Right.
clinically significant disturbance in an individuals, and it says cognition, how you
Hmm.
thinking,
How you
faulty,
think?
messed up
Yes.
thinking,
Yeah.
emotional regulation, can no
Hmm.
longer control your emotions. And
Yes.
many of these people are praying and
Yeah.
still can't get hold of it,
Can't
that
get
your
hold.
behavior is out of control. And
Hmm.
now this results in an impairment in your important areas of functioning. That's why
Right.
they're not in school and they're out on the streets killing people.
Yeah.
That's why people can't get out of the bed and go to work in the morning. And
Hmm.
people judge them. And I'm going to come to that in a minute, talk
That's
about
that's
church judges
yeah.
people. But,
Yeah.
but let me share this.
Yeah. You're
Uh,
you're talking truth. This is real anointed needed
yeah.
talk.
We
You
judge
know.
them. We
Yeah.
judge them.
We
We
do.
judge them.
Hmm.
So the anxiety disorders are so huge. Look, her sister Rene'e, Reverend Rene'e, having
Hmm.
them fights that go on with the choir
Hmm.
and the culinary committee and the willing
Yeah.
workers, half
Yeah.
of that's because somebody got some mental health disorders going on.
Yes.
But
True that. True that.
bipolar affective
Yeah.
disorders are real. Depression, the
Hmm.
number one mental health disorder in this country, impacts 300 million people, and it affects women more than men. So go
Amen.
back to the church. How
Yeah.
many more women are in the church than
Or in the
men?
church. So you know that it's full of depressive people that's in
Yeah.
depression, having depression,
Yeah.
right? Yes.
Yes. And then we expect them
Mhm.
to carry themselves in a way that they can't carry
Yes.
themselves.
Yeah.
And guess what? I hate to tell all the preachers out there, but preaching at them
Yeah.
every Sunday, every Wednesday
Mm-hmm.
does not heal
Right.
mental health disorders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Be real.
That's it. I
Yes.
mean, that's it. So there are some things the church can be, and I know we want to have time to get to the questions, but I want to share these things with you.
Oh, no problem. Take your time. Take your time.
I want you to be able to get to those. Um, what really, and it sounds like an oxymoron when you
Okay.
say this piece right here, that
Mhm.
religious concepts and beliefs are resistance to treatment,
Oh.
because we tell people, and it's true, that
Mm-hmm.
you have to depend on God, that you have to trust God.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, it is a lack of faith. In
Mm-hmm.
some cases,
Yeah.
but in many, many cases, it is deeper and bigger than that. And so when people who have very serious mental health issues, they
Mm-hmm.
need some treatment, they need some therapy, they even sometimes they need some medication. But what they are clinging to is, my pastor said, I just need to depend on God. Well,
Well,
God has created all these therapists and these medications for a reason.
right.
I must not be trusting God enough. I must not have enough faith. So
But do
what
we?
is the, ma'am, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask you in that. It do we take it for granted that everybody's on the same playing field? You know how the Bible says that
Yeah,
when I was a child, I spoke as a child,
yeah,
but there are still those
yeah,
that are still in the child level of relationship
yeah.
with God. So they can't. We expect them to respond as an adult in the spiritual realm, and they're still as children?
Well, actually, Reverend, you're on two different pages, though. That is true for some people,
Okay.
but mental health issues that are clinical,
Okay.
it's just not a matter of just pray
It
about it.
doesn't. Yeah. It
You
doesn't
need to go get help,
get help.
because some of these people have been well raised in the church,
Hmm.
have strong spiritual guidance,
Okay.
know the word inside and out. And here's where they get messed up. I know I'm praying. I know I'm praying. I know I'm trying to trust God, but I'm still crazy. And I know I'm crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
what
see. I see
next?
what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying? So
Yes.
it
Yes.
becomes the clinical needs versus the spiritual concerns. And then it gets all intertwined and messed up. And it's a slippery slope. It's a
Yeah.
really slippery slope. But then here's where we set these people up. They know the word.
Hmm.
They know they've been in church. They
Okay.
know they're serving, they're tithing, they're doing everything. They know they really trust God, but
Okay.
then they're not being healed. So
Mm.
then those questions come up. Has God forsaken me?
Hmm.
Why
Okay.
doesn't God heal me?
Hmm.
So then here's where we mess them up again. Is medication or therapy a lack of faith?
Yeah. We've set them up for that, but I believe we the preaching of like God is a musician, a genie in the bottle, instead of the focus on his will, his just will, might might not agree with what you would like for this your scenario to be, you know.
Well, yeah, because I'm a counselor. And
Okay.
so I know the purpose and what therapy and medication can do. And
Mm-hmm.
because I'm also a minister,
Mm-hmm.
they're not diametrically oppositions. They're not
Okay.
opposed to each other. You can
Okay.
have both. You can
Okay.
have total trust in God to heal you,
Mm-hmm.
and you can also go to therapy and take your medication. And check this: most people who get a diagnosis of cancer,
Mm-hmm.
most people who fall down and think I've broken my leg.
Mhm.
Most people who have a raging headache,
Mhm.
they go seek help,
Okay.
and they don't feel bad about going to their chemo. They
Okay.
don't feel bad
Right.
about having the cast on their leg. They don't
Mhm.
feel bad about taking a Tylenol.
Because
So
people can
are they
actually
believing in
see, they
healing
don't
or
have to
not?
prove anything, I guess, because you can see that there's something wrong and it's obvious. Is
Hmm.
so is that telling us that the reason that people do not get help is because they know that other people can't see what's obvious to them, and so they have shame and there's a fear of being judged, and they're in that arena, so to
Well,
speak.
unfortunately, I said this earlier, and I almost hate to say this again because it should not be the case.
Hmm.
People are judged too much in the church.
Hmm.
And we do have a lot of crazy folks rolling up in the church. You know who they are. You know they're crazy when they get out of the car, when they pull up on the parking lot.
Hmm.
But they keep showing back up. And we need to do a better job of reaching out to those people, of being available to those people. And some of them are crazy and they're going to stay crazy because they've just hit a point that they've learned how to function
Function, yeah.
and they're okay, but
Hmm.
they may not be acting just like the next fella. And
Yes.
that's what, I will throw out here and say for free, I
Hmm.
think my church and my pastor does an amazing job of
Great.
meeting people where they
Where
are.
they are. Yes,
That's
yes.
it for the church.
Great. Yeah.
Meeting people where they are. What can we do to support you?
You.
And
Yes.
my pastor does take the time to
Hmm.
sit down with people and they say, Pastor, I need some counseling. But
Yes.
she's also not afraid to say, this is
Hmm.
bigger than me.
Right.
Go
Yes.
get
The
some help.
humility has to be there. Yes. If you're going to
Yes.
help someone else, you must embrace your humility. Yes.
And know
Yes.
what your limits are.
Yeah.
Most
Know
pastors,
your lane. Yes.
and look, let's just look,
Yeah.
Reverend Rene'e, because here's the other problem. The
Okay.
larger percentage of pastors are not trained therapists.
Yeah.
Pastoral counseling is not deep therapy, nor are they able to prescribe medicine to help you get over the bridge. So
Okay.
we need to do a better job as ministers and pastors of acknowledging what our limitations are, and that at some point it is necessary to move beyond just saying to people, pray about it, and
Right.
opening your mouth and telling people, you might want to go talk to your doctor.
Yeah, don't you think that's part of in building the church? That should be a part of the building process. Going forward, uh, we always try to build different areas, but isn't that a significant area of the church that should be looked upon to be built?
Well, actually, it is. And doing some research, preparing for this podcast, that is actual area of concern is that not enough churches even acknowledge the need for mental health and what
That's a ministry
capacity
within
in the
itself. Yes.
church. Well,
Yeah.
it is. It really, really is.
Hmm.
And here's the thing, though: some really sound ministries
Hmm.
can be helpful in that way. And I will use the example of our women's ministry.
Hmm.
We've not been functional since COVID, but I will say this very strong women's ministry that people could count on the time and the place and
Hmm.
in a trusted environment. We always started off this women's ministry with saying what happens here has to stay here.
Hmm.
People
Yeah.
have to be able to talk
Right.
here and be open, and they have to trust the
Trust.
people
Yes.
in this room.
Yes.
And with those sorts of ministries, and our experience has been people being open and able to talk about their issues. And sometimes we in a group as a group can guide them in the right direction, but also it gives us the opportunity to say, baby girl, you might want to go a little bit deeper
Hmm.
again and you may need to get some long-term therapy
Right.
to
Okay.
be able to deal with this.
Right.
And
Right.
so
Right.
it's where your ministry is. And again, Reverend Ellis, we've got to get better about training church leaders in every ministry. They just
Yes.
raise their hand and say, I want to lead this ministry.
Yes. And has, yeah, and that's just like directing the choir, and you don't know how to direct or
Yeah.
to even lead people. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And yeah.
And so many pastors, and not bashing pastors, and I'm really, really not, because I
Yeah, no,
have
we're just
a
being
job.
real, this
But
is just real
um,
talk. Things
but
that need to be
and
talked
here's the real talk.
about.
Too many men and women of God think because they can bring a sound word on Sunday morning
Mm-hmm.
that they have everything they need for all these other areas.
Mm-hmm.
We really need to be more serious as ministers in educating ourselves about mental health
Yeah.
needs and
Especially during
what.
this time with COVID has really taken the people into has really, I guess, taken the cap off
It,
of
it
mental health.
absolutely it
You know,
has.
yes,
Interesting you should say that, because it really, really has. And it's made people have to come to understand who they are as well on the
yes.
inside. And that's another whole issue.
Yes, yes, it is. This is very good talk that we've needed, and I'm sure that we have listeners out there across the country that are glad that we're is being engaged. At this time, because, like you say, this is subject that's not talked about or acknowledged.
Right.
In the church or even
But
in families, so to speak, even
right.
within families. You
And,
know.
and what about those people who do that? Who are
Hmm.
sincerely praying,
Hmm.
sincerely asking to be healed, and they
Yeah.
don't get healed. What do you do with those people?
Yeah. I think that even smaller churches that can't maybe uh, afford or have the capacity to uh, get the training or the teaching, or anyone in the church to have it, that resources, there's so much resources nowadays.
Well, that's
You,
the bottom line, because it is an unrealistic expectation to really expect the church to be able to provide those sorts of mental health services. It
yeah,
really is
every church can't do
unrealistic.
that. Yeah, right.
But what every church can
They
do
can't just have
is
the resources.
provide the resources and have
Yes,
information available to be able to tell people phone numbers and
yes,
lead them in the right direction. And I think we do a fairly good job of that as well, to be able to know what your limitations are. But I do think every church really at this point needs to
hmm
have someone who will be willing to have that information on hand, to be able to say where the resources are available.
true, true. That great,
And those
great.
are
This is
three things, and I'm going to take time to you these questions. These are the things that
okay.
a church can do, that any church can do to assist people who are dealing with mental health issues.
All
And by
right.
the way, don't forget that Kentucky ranks near the top in the United States of America in suicide for children and adults.
Oh, I didn't know that. Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And that's a long time statistic. The things
Yes.
that a church can do, we can spread awareness, we can educate. The next thing we can do is what you are all about. We can be truthful, we can
Hmm.
be real. Let's just stop telling people, pray about it and don't worry about it.
Hmm.
Okay? And I don't mean any harm when I say that, because it sounds like I've just been really, but I'm just telling you, you got to just stop making people think they're crazy.
Hmm.
And you just, it's like you're blowing people off when you
Yes.
just keep
Yes.
saying you must not be praying enough, you need to pray harder, have you talked to God about it? They've been awake
But I
all
think,
night for nights and nights and nights talking and praying, and again they're still crazy.
well, I think that's revealing our own. Don't want to reveal their own inadequacies. You know,
Yes. And
that's where
sometimes it's
that
not even
comes to
that,
play.
sometimes it's simply lack of knowledge. That's why we have to educate ourselves as ministers, and we have to be connected to really what's going on in the world. Yes, we need to study the word, but we also need to
Also,
study other resources and other books and educate ourselves. We need to understand who the people in our congregation are
right,
and what their needs
correct.
may be. And we have to be truthful that simply praying doesn't fix everything. Sometimes you need some therapy and sometimes you need some medicine. The
Hmm.
third thing we can do, non judgmental.
Yes.
And as church leaders,
Hmm.
encourage the congregation to treat our people well. And I'm just going to throw in here for free. Sometimes that's what's really nice about having a female pastor. I will say my pastor is insistent,
Okay.
adamant that we
Uh-huh.
treat all people well who come through the door. If
Yeah.
they drunk, if they high as Cooley Brown, you don't get to judge them.
Right. Right.
And she
Right.
sticks to that. If
Yeah.
they half naked, she will not tolerate you judging them. They in
Right.
here,
Yeah.
so we're gonna work with what we got.
But
Okay,
right.
but
That
we
is
need more.
awesome. That is awesome. Because
I'm very, I'm
yeah,
pretty proud.
I try to look at people the same way. I say all, and I remind myself constantly. I don't care what arena I'm in, out even in the world, in the public. I remind myself that these are God's creation,
Yes,
you know, and so
yes.
they deserve that respect, that acknowledgement, no matter how small they are, how little are, whatever capacity that they're in. And I really try to uh, use that continue on a continuous basis. Just remind myself, everybody I see out here, everything I see is God's creation, so it deserves that respect of acknowledgement of who
Well,
they
it
are.
does.
Yeah.
And this is not in particular a mental health issue, but it's just something I remind people in my church about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If I had been pushed out the door when I was back in my 20s, even late 20s,
Mm-hmm.
and had left the party at 4, swung by White Castle, then in that choir stand at 11 o'clock the next morning.
Uh-huh.
If I'd been pushed out and judged, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah.
We've got to meet people where they are.
I understand. I identify with that because if I could just share a little moment when I was first called into the ministry, I questioned God. I said, anybody gonna listen to me? I'm the least likely of anybody.
Hello.
And when I did accept my calling, they called me the crying preacher because
Yeah.
every Sunday I was put down. You don't look like no preacher. You don't act like no preacher. And I cried every Sunday at my home church. And they called me the crying preacher, but I stayed there because I believed God. You know,
Yes.
I
If
believed
you
him when he
believe
told me,
God.
it says, it's not about you. He said, you
Yes.
just do what I say, speak what I say, speak, and it's on me. And
Yes.
so I stayed and I persevered. But I cried. I mean, I wasn't wearing, I wore braids and Bantu knots back in the 80s, And so can you imagine when everybody was getting their hair permed? I was
Yes.
wearing Bantu knots and French braids and braids. And it was like, what? Go get your hair permed. You don't
Yes.
look like
Yes.
no preacher,
Yes.
you know.
And that's
And
how
so
these
I
people
understand. I
feel.
I did not feel like I belonged, but because
Yes.
I believed God,
Hmm.
I stayed.
Hmm. And that's
30
exactly
now,
how the
30
people
some years
feel.
later, I'm still peculiar. I tell people all the time, yes, I am peculiar, but
Me
I've
too.
embraced that. You
Me
know,
too.
God knew
Me
who I
too.
was before he called me.
That's it. But you have the strength and the fortitude to stick it out. Everybody doesn't.
Yeah, everybody doesn't.
And that's where the problem comes in.
Yeah.
Everybody doesn't. So the fourth thing we can do, right in line with this, is stay in touch with people. Because
Hmm.
many people in that moment, they run to the chair and say, I'm going to join the church. I know this is going to get my mental health together. This is going to save me. But then
Hmm.
the mental health doesn't allow them to keep coming back. So the church, we have a responsibility and accountability the best that we can, because it doesn't
Hmm.
always work, to try to
Yeah.
stay in touch with those people, to keep letting them know we're
Follow
here
up.
for you. And yes. And then the final thing is that spiritual support.
Yes.
Praying that folks will be led, check this, to their needed appropriate treatment.
Yes.
To
Yes.
their needed appropriate treatment.
And
And
that's the prayer with them, I guess you would say, is when
yeah,
you know that they needed to pray with them, so that they trust you because you pray with them and say, we're going to pray that you find this help, that you
yes,
are led, to be prayed. And I think that would build trust among, you and the pastor or what have you, or the ministry leader and the person, if they pray with them to show them that, we're going to pray together that you find the help you need.
it's a trust issue. Now
Yeah.
you do know, Sister Renee, Reverend Renee, that half the people who need mental health support don't even know they need it,
Yeah.
which comes back to another trust issue.
Trust issue.
To be
Yeah.
able to say to somebody, "Baby, you know what? You got a whole lot going on right here, and it looks like you've lost touch with reality. Talk to me. What's going on with me,
Mm-hmm.
with you?" And you begin talking to people, and when you realize the number of people that have demons
Mm.
talking to them in their
Talking
head
to
for
them in their head
real
for
all
real.
day long, that's biblical as well. But
Mm-hmm.
the number of people walking around dealing with real demons,
Mm-hmm.
and it's deep. That's how a lot of people end up in suicidal situations. How a lot of
Yeah.
people end up. Uh, think about Reverend Renee, because it's getting on my last nerve, driving me crazy. I'm trying to be compassionate about this. The
Mm-hmm.
number of those little tents just popping up in neighborhoods
Mm-hmm.
all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
People are just living on the street,
On the street.
building homeless camps all over.
Mm-hmm.
That is a mental health issue.
Yeah.
The church, Stachelle Bussey's all on it. She's done an awesome job.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But some of her frustration are the churches that refuse to acknowledge it. And
Yeah.
this, and I don't mean to be judgmental when I say this because it's going to sound judgmental, but
Mm-hmm.
too many of us think our jobs are from 7 to 8 on Wednesday and
Mm-hmm.
11 to 1 on Sunday,
Yes. Yeah.
and don't understand
Mm-hmm.
this sense of what real ministry is.
Or
But this,
Christmas and Thanksgiving. You know.
right, right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. So
And we
those
go
are the
and,
things
and issue food or baskets on those days.
I love.
And the rest of
And
the
have
year,
nothing to eat the rest of the year.
nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
Exactly. Exactly. So that is all that I want to upfront share. So if you have questions,
Well, this was emailed me just before the podcast started. It's about a marriage. It says, but I think you answered this one. What is the difference between counseling with the pastor, church, or seeing a therapist? I think you, and if one is better than the other. But I'm gonna let you
oh,
just specifically
ooh,
speak on that.
that's a good question.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a couple of things here. A pastor is a good person if you trust your pastor. And you said keep it real and tell the
For
truth.
real. Yeah.
Every pastor you could not go to with something that deep about marital issues. For one, a lot of them gossip and still talk to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Two, too many of them judge you. And three, too many of them are doing too much dirt themselves.
Be real.
Hello, to
Yeah.
talk to you about marital issues.
Yeah.
And when you go to your pastor about marital issues, that's got to be somebody you really, really
Really
trust.
trust. Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna have to throw this. You're gonna come and meet my pastor. I'm gonna throw this in again.
Mm-hmm.
People do go to her,
Yeah, I would like to
and they
meet her.
do.
I've seen your Facebook accounts, and I said I really would like to meet her.
She
Yes.
counsels with people, but they can trust her. But
Hmm.
here's the other thing: she's been married 42 years.
Okay.
My mother told me many, many years ago when she and my father were going through their divorce, the
Hmm.
first marital counselor they went to, she said the minute she found out he wasn't married, she was out of there.
Yeah. Okay.
And I have a very good friend, she's dead now, who is a nun,
Hmm.
uh, a sister of a Dominican nun. And she did marital counseling. And I never understood that. And,
Hmm.
like I said in my introduction, I've been married 33 years. Uh,
Right.
No nun can do marital counseling. If you strictly talk about you read
Those
their
are
books,
things that she totally is out of her range.
Says, you can't help nobody for real, and the chips are down with some marital counseling.
Uh,
So that is but also marital counseling, like all deep counseling and therapy, is a
mhm,
trained skill. I have a degree in counseling, so
yeah,
I feel qualified to
yeah,
talk about some things. But some relationships and issues, even in the marriage, are
mhm,
so deep that a
mhm,
pastor needs to acknowledge that if I have not been really trained
yeah,
to go to this deep place, because we're not
mhm.
just talking about praying, we're talking about for real effecting change, then
Right,
you have
effective
to be
change. Right.
wise enough, and you have to pray as a pastor for God to tell you, you to send them and refer them for
Mhm.
deeper, that this is over your head.
Right. And he will do that. We just
And
have to, like I was talking about in
he will
Bible
do
study,
that.
but you have to listen
But you
to
have
that
to
still
listen.
voice. Yes.
And
And
some
that
things
let
in the
pride
marriage,
get in the way.
right.
Yeah. Because
And you know, it's a scale. Some
hmm
marital issues are a one or a two, some are 10.
hmm yeah.
And when it hit on 10, and
hmm
here's the other piece, and let me throw this in for free. Don't take advantage of your pastor,
Yeah.
because some issues are on a 10, and the amount of time that it takes, and the amount of study and preparation that it takes,
hmm
and you're going to pay, if you go downtown, $100 an hour, $200 an hour.
hmm
Some people just simply take advantage of pastors
Yeah.
and their time, and do not respect and want to pay pastors. And that's another whole subject we get
And
into
that's,
another day,
yeah.
for their
Yeah.
time.
They want the
So,
professionalism, but they don't want to pay for it. Well, here's one. It says if a spouse sees a therapist separately, should they also see one together?
that's up to the couple, because here's the bottom line with that. Sometimes one part of the couple does not want to go to therapy, and you can't make an adult person go to therapy.
That's in the
But
next question. That was the
right,
next
you
question.
always, the
Should,
bottom
should
line for
not
every,
attending be a deal breaker in a relationship or should it be mandatory? Yeah, you went right into the next question. Yeah.
what? I don't think, um, it's hard to say what's a deal breaker,
hmm
because for real, every person, and this is my own personal philosophy,
hmm
every person is responsible for themselves.
No. Yeah, I believe that.
And you are responsible for taking care of your mental health.
hmm
And if your spouse chooses not to address their mental health, but you want to address yours, you need to go do that.
hmm
And sometimes it is a deal breaker if the other person won't go, because their behaviors and their mental status and capacity is destroying the other person.
Yes,
So
I would.
you have to make a decision, at
hmm
what point do you
hmm
totally sell your soul to
hmm
another human
Another
being?
human being.
Okay? And
Yeah.
so those are the decisions, and you
Decisions
cannot
that
live
you have
both.
individually you have to make to get to that point. Well,
Mm.
this is the last one I'm going to ask you because you really all the questions that were on here you talked about them, but this one it says that can a marriage make it if in the beginning both are equally yoked, but somewhere down the line one became an unbeliever? That's it. That's yeah.
You know what? It's not a matter of being an unbeliever. And let me say this, my husband is a believer. He's a 100% believer. I know he prays. I know he does his devotions, but he's turned off by the church.
hmm
Okay, for whatever, and that's full transparency there, folks.
hmm
But I'm nothing if not transparent and real. He's totally turned off by the church, and he does not attend church.
hmm
Does that slow me down?
Yeah.
No.
No.
Does
Yeah.
he respect who I am? Yes.
hmm
Does he expect to tell me I can't go to church because he don't go to church? No. But do I still expect him to conduct himself in a proper and fitting way in this household? Yes. Does he always? No. Do I
hmm
always? No. But
Be real. Yes, yes. The
but
struggles of life.
the
Yes.
struggles of life, and the struggles of life are real.
They're
and
real.
and there's an up and down. If you get 2 good weeks where everything in your marriage and your household and your bills and your children, your grandchildren's all chilled, you better
Mm-hmm.
look out, because the next 3 weeks are gonna be hell. So so
Would you say the next three wheels will be right?
if you get 2 good weeks, you get 3 rough ones. But
You are
you
so
got
right. You are
to
so right.
have your spiritual life intact, but also, and I examine myself mentally. Again,
Yeah.
I'm a counselor. I
Yeah.
check myself.
Mm-hmm.
And if I see my thinking is faulty, I
Mm-hmm.
do go back to that word and I think
Yeah.
about what I'm thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
But Reverend Renee, that is a taught skill. That is
Yes.
tough, tough, tough
Yes.
to
I talk
shut.
about that all the time, that man in the mirror. It's our responsibility to keep ourselves right so that what we go through aren't affecting others, and allowing us to be the people that God's calling for in these days. But we can't if we don't address our issues and we ignore our issues.
Address our issues.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's hard to do, to look at yourself and to be real with yourself. But
Mm-hmm.
self-reflection and self-evaluation is a real skill. That's why
Mm-hmm.
we talk about in our women's ministry so much. And I
Mm-hmm.
keep talking about that because the women are the heart of the household.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we as women, we have to monitor the temperature
Yes.
in our household, the whole vibe of our households. We create that vibe. And so we are not checking our own mental health. And
Mm-hmm.
mental health is real. And,
Yes.
and
Yes.
nobody is always 100% every day all together mentally. Things pull you
Right.
down. You change. You go through things. Life's issues change you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to look at those things. And when you have dealt with trauma, you
Yeah.
have to stop and evaluate, what has this trauma done to my mental capacity? And
Yes.
especially as ministers and pastors, and we have to be real about ministers and pastors.
Mm-hmm.
Pastors go through marital issues.
Yeah.
Pastors go through mental health issues. Pastors go through issues with their parents sick, their grandkids, their kids going through things. So if
Grief,
you are,
yeah, they
yeah,
deal with those things
yeah.
too. Yeah.
So if you haven't learned to be real with yourself and check yourself and say, you know what? I'm out here and I'm doing too much because too much is going on in my life.
Yeah.
What am I doing? And I know Casey Combs would agree with this, to say,
Hmm.
what am I doing to
Yeah.
check myself to
Yeah.
make sure I am in a good mental space to deal with other people's mental
Right.
stuff. And that's
Right.
a responsibility that we have as ministers and as pastors,
Mm.
to stay in
Really.
touch and to go to therapy if we need it,
And to go to therapy if we need it. Yes.
and
And
take
not
care of
be
plans if
ashamed.
you need them.
And not be
And
ashamed that we're
not
seeking help.
be ashamed. And you should not ever be ashamed. This depression is so real. I mean, it's just so
Yeah.
so real. And getting a license and an ordination certificate does
That's,
not exclude you, does not exempt you from ever having to deal with
mhm.
mental health issues and
Yeah.
dealing with depression and these other issues. But it's a matter of being real with who you are.
Right, right. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been so rich. I know that those that are viewing have really gotten a taste, and those that will be viewing even later, because this podcast will be on all the podcast platforms later on today. It is live streamed on Facebook and on YouTube as we speak, and it will be continuously up so that people can go back and look at it and take notes, for because it's up eternally. And so I know that this has really touched a lot of people, and will touch even more people, as they tune in to hear what you've talked about on today concerning mental health. And we are sure really appreciative to you for coming on. You have given us a lot of information. You have empowered us, inspired us, and we are forever grateful. And we're not going to let this be the last time for the last time, because I'm
Reverend
sure
Ellis, thank you. I
you
certainly
have a lot to share.
appreciate you trusting me to come on to your podcast with such a significant, relevant issue for these days in which we're living. But I really appreciate you, and I'm so happy to be able to call you friend.
Yes, yes, me too. Because that's what the podcast is about. To be real, stop lying. It ain't easy. I said on this, to be honest, I said on the topic for a couple of years. Lord gave it to me in 2019 before COVID. And went around every other topic but this, because I was like, Lord, you're going to have to show me and lead me to people that's not afraid to be real, you know, because this is real anointed, needed talk, to be real, to stop lying, stop putting on a front that
Right.
everything is okay and the world is falling apart around us,
Yes.
in front
Yes.
of us, even. And
Yes.
in 2023, if this does not get your attention, that we need some real anointed, needed talk, I don't know what else could.
You're right about
You
it.
know, I don't know what else could. So I am very appreciative to you and the other guests that have come on. Yesterday was Reverend Delmetria Casey Combs, and we're grateful for her on yesterday. She gave a great understanding on mental health, and we're thankful for you that you even take us even farther, hallelujah, into the sense of our personal sins and supernatural oppression, how it plays a part in mental health. And on next Friday, I'd like for you to tune in on that we have for the third session, Reverend LaShonda Fletcher will be on talking about the Black church and mental health. Um, and on Saturday, February 4th, my cousin, the Reverend Dr. Sharon Ellis Davis, will be talking about the trauma of sexual and domestic violence.
My
And
Lord.
Dylan, both of them have my cat is trying to get on this podcast. I'm sorry. Will be both of them have written books in these areas also. And so I am sure that these sessions is going to enlighten, empower, and just help people, address the issues that is in their lives personally, their family's life, and how to deal with it, and even in the lives of the church, the church to be more open and honest, so that we can address these issues, so that we can be the people that God is calling for in these last and evil days. There is much work to be done. And I want to applaud you and your church for the things that you're doing over there at Oak Grove. And I will be over there to visit. I try to visit wherever the Lord leads me. On certain days, I say, Lord, where you want me to visit over here? Where do you want me to go? So I'm sure that I will be there, and I'd love to meet your pastor. It sounds like a great and wonderful work that
Yes.
y'all are doing
And
over there
Reverend Ellis,
in
we
your life.
applaud you for your work and your boldness. You are doing a new thing for a new generation in a time such as this. And my hat is just off to you, lady.
Oh, it's
What
God.
you do.
I'm
I
trying to
just
be
admire your
obedient,
work. I admire your work.
trying to be obedient, because the Lord has spoke to me in 2019. He said the world is the church. And I was like, what do you want me to do about the world? I'm serious. I said, what do you want me? This is how I talk.
Yeah.
What do you want me to do? And they had me getting all kind of equipment and things of that nature. And I was like, for what? But after I got set up, the pandemic hit.
Hmm.
So the Lord
And you
had
were ready.
prepared me before the pandemic. So I got I say, my training wheels going
Yes, ma'am.
in
Yes, ma'am.
advance. And now we're up to this point of really stabilizing and trying to really reach out to people. So we're asking your friends and family, y'all subscribe, so that on YouTube, REVELLIS 50, Reverend Ellis 50, on YouTube, you subscribe and you notified when all the podcasts are coming up. And like I say, they're on there, or they're on the playlist. There's over 100 some podcasts and videos up, preaching, teaching, all kind of subject matter is there on YouTube channel REVELLIS 50. So subscribe, share with your friends so that they too can share the word and be blessed. Because that's what this is about. We don't get paid for this. It is a platform that the Lord has put on me to present to others. And so I just share and just ask them to subscribe so that they can get the notices and everything. So I am so happy, and I look forward to joining with you again because we have a year worth of topics that I'm sure that you can expound on that the Lord has put on my heart for this year, 2023. And I'm looking forward to joining with you again on a platform such as this so that the world can be impacted and empowered and inspired by real, anointed, needed talk. Because we understand we have to be real. We have to stop lying. This life that we live is not easy. And it does not look like it's going to change or revert back until that blessed day. So I want to say good night. Thank you first for joining with us, and Reverend Angela French Cole for being here with us. And we will talk to you later. Bye.